Hi guys, this is Matt here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Polar Pacer Pro, which is Polar's latest running watch slash multisport watch. And we're going to have a look at its features, other bits and bobs. I'm going to tell you what I like about this watch, what I don't like about this watch, and whether you should buy it or not. So let's get into this. The Polar Pacer Pro has been announced, I believe, a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. It is Polar's latest running watch. As you could guess from the name, it's called the Pacer. Although I guess you could use pacing for cycling as well. But anyway, Polar markets the Polar Pacer Pro as a running watch. It's been announced at the same time as the Polar Pacer, which is the kind of cheaper version of the Pacer Pro. Why Pacer and Pacer Pro? Polar had a Pacer watch around 30 years ago, and that was obviously quite different times. For whatever reason, they didn't carry on with the Pacer franchise, but they thought it was time to revive this. So they kind of made a watch that is very similar to the Polar Vantage M2. And unlike the V2, the Polar Vantage M2 didn't have a touchscreen, and nor does the Pacer or the Pacer Pro watches. Probably because of the similarity, and probably because it costs exactly the same and better than the M2. The Pacer series is probably going to replace the M2. We'll see about that. From a physical point of view, the Pacer Pro is it's a very light watch. I believe it's 41 grams with the straps. The straps are actually non-hinged. The watch face is not awfully big. So I think it's fine. I mean, it was fine on my wrist. I guess I haven't got the smallest hands. I mean, I haven't got the fattest wrists either. But yeah, I mean, it worked really, really well for me because of its lightness. The watch case is made of plastic. It's like a hard plastic, and then the bezel is, I think it's aerospace grade aluminium. And then there are 5 physical buttons around the edge of the case, laid out in the usual Polar fashion. So you got 3 buttons on the right hand side and then 2 buttons on the left hand side. And then you got the screen under a Corning Gorilla Glass 3.0 lens. Polar puts a lot of emphasis, so to say, on the new membrane pixel screen, which is set to be super bright, or they're at least much brighter than on the Vantage M2. And it is brighter. Other new feature is the new processor. So it's set to be, I don't know, 7 times faster than the previous. Again, the one in the M2. Screen transitions are quite fast as well. It's pretty good. It's not the biggest display. It's not the most complicated user interface. So again, for that, this processor is more than enough. Moving on to the features, the Polar Pacer series inherited some of the stuff from the Vantage series and some of the stuff from the Grid X, which is Polar's outdoor watch, like the rugged outdoor watch. So you get all the tests, or not all the tests, but most of the tests that you can find on the Vantage V2, such as the cycling test and then the running test. You haven't got the leg recovery test or the autostatic test. You got the usual fitness test, which measures VO2 max when you rest. And there's a new test called the walking test, like I'm going to talk about it in just a minute, fuel-wise, which is a feature that recommends fuel intake, carbohydrates. It also has Strava segments, so you can set Strava segments up straight in the watch. And then you also get, the usual sports modes, a lot of them, including a multisport mode. So it's quite capable from this perspective. One thing I forgot to mention, the battery life is set to be 7 days, considering average usage, whatever that means. In reality, I found it to be closer to 5 days. The Pacer Pro has like an always-on screen, which is something that a lot of people prefer. So there is that. And with the always-on screen, it has a roughly 5-day battery life, which again is not terrible. You have to charge it once a week. I think it's pretty reasonable. On the back of the watch, you got the Polar Precision Prime optical heart rate sensor that has, I believe, 10 LEDs. And a few skin proximity sensors, so it only measures heart rate when it's basically on your wrist. The Pacer Pro also has a new charger. So Polar, like they used to have like this bigger cradle chargers, which were magnetic, but the Pacer Pro has like this smaller, still magnetic charger, which you can clip on at the to the bottom of the watch. Let's talk about the things that I like about the Polar Pacer Pro. The best thing about the Pacer Pro is that it's in line with Polar's the aesthetic that I would expect from Polar, and then the user experience I expect from a Polar watch. I know where to find things, and there's like a continuity in the features and the operation of the watch. The new screen is also, it's easier to read, it's brighter. It's not an AMOLED screen, but it's a bright memory and pixel screen, which I think is, you know, is very decent. It's a very, very light watch, so I quite like that I can wear it for sleeping. I did wear it for the last 2 weeks basically non-stop, apart from when I had to charge it, and I didn't mind it. It's just comfortable to wear, really, so that's another good thing. I do like the tests. It's always good fun. I think that's one of the biggest sort of USPs of Polar watches. And you can measure your running performance, you can measure your cycling performance, and you can see how it changes over time. And I think it helps people stay on track with their fitness. You can set your daily activity levels. And I think it's quite fun because you're like, oh my God, I'm only on 60% and it's like 6 o'clock, so maybe I should go for a run so I can get it up to 100%. I think it's just a fun way of encouraging people to move. And then finally, I think, and this goes to other Polar watches as well, the sleep tracking and the sleep monitoring is excellent. But Polar watches are really good for recovery and monitoring recovery and monitoring readiness to work out. So that's another great thing. Okay, let's talk about what I don't like about the Pacer Pro. First of all, it feels slightly dated. In 2022, to have a watch with a memory and pixel screen, no matter how bright it is, at this price range, with a 7-day battery life, it's not quite enough. I appreciate that the Polar Pacer Pro is not a flagship watch, but at the same time, it feels like that it could have been better. Not to mention the user interface of the watch, which hasn't changed much forever. And again, it's not too sexy, really. It's fine, you know. It's nothing to write home about. Sorry for the intermission, guys. My battery died in the other microphone, so I had to put the directional microphone on. I'm hoping that the sound is going to be okay. So I was talking about things that I don't like about the Pacer Pro, and then one of the things that I don't, it's not like I don't like, but I don't think it's quite functional, or the feature is kind of fleshed out, is the new walking test. So the way it works, you have to do 50 minutes of walking, and then the watch is supposed to measure your VO2 max via walking. You have to do a 3 or 5 minute warm-up, and then you have to keep your heart rate at a certain level, and then as a result of this walking test, the watch is going to give you a VO2 max estimation. In reality, what you do is you start the walking test, you got 3 or 5 minutes of warm-up, and then you do 10 minutes worth of walking, and again you have to keep your heart rate at a certain level. If you ever did any sort of endurance training, your heart rate is not going to go like, you're not going to spike just because you're walking. So you end up walking faster and faster until you basically almost power walk, and then the watch is going to tell you to stop running, so you slow down. But then obviously because you slow down, your heart rate is going to slow down, so you end up like, again, start walking again faster and faster. And then again the watch is going to tell you to slow down. So you do this for 10 minutes, which again in itself is quite confusing because you can't really get your heart rate up to the right level in that short period of time. Your VO2 max estimation is going to be like way off. So in my case, I went for a walking test in my lunchtime at work. I did the 50 minutes. My VO2 max based on that walking test was 35. Which is way below than my usual VO2 max. So according to my Phoenix 7X, my VO2 max is 52. So later on the day, so I think it was early evening when I was, you know, on the sofa, so I wasn't doing much. I'm going to do a fitness test, which is a test that's available on many previous watches, Polar watches as well, which assesses VO2 max while sitting. Okay, so I did that test, and it gave me the VO2 max of I think it was either 62 or 65. Again, on the same day when I had the 35 from the walking test, estimation from the walking test. So I just wasn't sure what to do with the walking test. Again, on paper, it's great, and I hope Polar will be able to do something about this test. But as how it is now, it just doesn't really work for people who run or cycle or do any sort of endurance or stuff, because it's impossible to get your heart rate up to that level without actually start jogging or running. I want Polar to try a bit harder because I want Polar watches to be even better, because I like Polar. So that was another thing I was like, I just wasn't sure, you know. Again, from a familiarity point of view, I'm, you know, 100% like, I love Polar watches, you know. That's you know, I always gonna have a soft spot for Polar watches because I use them for years. And again, it just you know, they are like great little watches. But at the same time, like, I don't want Polar to fall behind the competition by not trying hard enough. So Polar, try harder. So I guess we are at the point where I should say whether you should buy this watch or not. I think the Polar Pacer Pro is not a bad watch. It's a good watch. It would be a great watch if it was 2019 or 2018. In 2022, it's a good watch. It's a good multi-sport watch. It's not quite as good as a running watch because there are, again, cheaper running watches that do exactly the same or better than the Pacer Pro. So they have, you know, they're either cheaper or they have different and better features. Or lighter than the Pacer Pro, but as a mid-range multi-sport watch, the Pacer Pro is pretty good. So you got like the Garmin Fenix 7X, which is like what, £900, and then you got the Pacer Pro, which is like what, $259 or something. So, you know, 1/3 the price, and it has like a bunch of features. It measures, you know, it measures recovery, it tracks sleep. That's great, and again, it's a multi-sport watch, so you have the multi-sport functionality on it for that much. So, you know, I think that's great. If you're thinking about upgrading from a different Polar watch from a few years back, 100%. And if you like the Polar interface, again, you're gonna get the exact same thing, so might as well. Again, it's the same price as the M2, and it has a better screen, and it has a faster processor, so it's a no-brainer. So if you want to be like, oh, I just want to upgrade from my M2 to the Pacer Pro, yes, that's a great idea. If you're looking for a running watch, again, there are cheaper models out there. There are, I would say, even better running watches out there that have that like running watch functionality for less money, better screens. So as a running watch at this price range, maybe not quite, you know, the best watch you can get. I just can't be mad at Polar because I just love Polar watches for recovery, for sleeping. And again, if you want something that's like performance variable, that is really good for recovery and sleep tracking, you know, the Pacer Pro is it's a really good option, really. You know, long story short. Other than that, you know, get a Chorus Pace 2 or get like a Huawei Watch GT Runner or whatever. Even the Garmin 55, you know, the Forerunner 55 is perfectly decent. You know, it hasn't got like a mind-blowing screen, but again, that is fine as a running watch. And again, from a multi-sport watch point of view, not a bad option. So yeah, that was it for the Polar Pacer Pro review. I hope you guys liked it. I'll be back shortly with some running shoe reviews because I've got heap loads of those to review. And again, if you like the video, obviously right at the end, if you watched it to this point, I would hope so that you liked it or you had a good laugh out of it. So, you know, please leave a like, subscribe, or consider subscribing, and I shall see you soon. Have a good day, guys. Cheers. Bye.